This is going to be such a fun one. I can't wait to sketch some sea stacks together. If you are just starting this, all of these together are slightly connected. And depending on where you're at, you're going to start to see that big picture come together. But today is like the sixth one. So we have like a nice even rows. And so if you've already sketched it out, amazing. If you need to quickly sketch it out, it's fine too. Just make sure they kind of line up. And we're going to be painting some sea stacks. I think that's the proper term. In Oregon, they have huge ones, but I always see these in Maine and Alaska and Seward and Acadia. And I always just want to like live on one, just set up a tent and just have my own little tiny island. So we're going to paint one of those today. If you haven't already and you get a chance, please hit the little subscribe or the like button. That's just what kind of gets these things moving on the algorithms and really helps us out and costs nothing. But these so far, you'll see I've got all these kind of lined up. I'm gonna scoot a couple of these out of the way, but I'll probably hold on to these two if you've already done them, just so I can kind of gauge the color. And if you are trying to make all of these together, don't worry too much about getting it perfect. Like, this is a cool painting on its own, and this is a cool painting on its own, and that's how it's designed. But it is kind of fun when they all line up. So if you get just mostly the same value, we'll be in good shape. So without further ado, let us get going here and paint some really fun sea stacks. Got my colors, did a little bit of a refresh, and to kind of refill them, just squeeze that tube of paint out into those and let it dry. And I got my water right here, and grab some tissue paper just in case. The watercolorist's eraser. Although there's none at Costco when I went, so we're doing like Kirkland brand now. And we are gonna start with, I'm not sure if we start with the beach or the water. We'll see. Actually, just to give you a sense too where we're going here. So we've got this. Actually, let's just start with the beach here, and then I'll explain. I'll explain all in a second. Beach first, making sense later. So I'm going to kind of probably jump in, grab a little bit of this burnt sienna, maybe a touch of yellow. You know my beach textures by now. We're kind of aiming for something that looks like a graham cracker, but like not quite as crumbly. Somebody should really kind of come in and name watercolors like they do crayons or wall paints or something. I feel like you get some really fun names. I love the word sienna, but I'd totally buy a tube of graham cracker or like toasted Cheez-It or something. Maybe I'm just doing paints with lunch is a bad idea. But so we got a little bit of that graham cracker there, just seeing if I need any slightly different colors, but you can kind of adjust it as you need. Although sometimes I add a little bit of some darkness to the edge, just like right by the shore, because that's where the shadows are going to be. Voila. And what we're going to do today is we're painting in our kind of beach here, and we've got this long row of trees, but behind it is kind of another row of trees as well. So there's going to be like mountains and stuff up there at some point. So it's really... we've got kind of some foliage behind, some foliage in front, some foliage even closer, but we want these to stand out. They're going to be a little bit dark. So we're actually going to start with these kind of almost blooms and things like that. So we're going to try to go for a lot of texture right up front, which is going to be really fun, just to kind of give you a sense of how it all shakes out. And today we're going to have some fun because we're going to kind of really be able to lean into these trees and the way that even just a couple of trees can be a really fun subject. Okay, so if we're going to do this, not to hold this painting the entire time, definitely in the way, but it's basically this kind of green. We made one last time, which was really fun, but I'm really going to aim for these blooms. I want some fun water to do some cool stuff. And I'm going to try it one way where I basically just put all my color right here, and then I just add some water in and let it kind of flow up, which is kind of a cool way to do it. I'll show you what that looks like. So step one, gonna make some color. I'm probably just gonna use some green and some, I'll probably just add a little bit of yellow in there afterwards. We'll do the lazy route. Touch of yellow, and I'm just going to just brush it on. Real thick, real loose. It's like the opposite of a hike or something, where you have to kind of warm up into it. I feel like paintings are almost where you start loose and then you get tighter, which is actually very much like a hike as well. Adding some green now. And you'll see I kind of ignore this bottom section. That's fine. And you could go, you could do this if you wanted the trees. It is going to be covered up in the top. You can be as loose as you want. That's looking lovely. Maybe a touch more green just for fun. And then I'm going to come in the bottom here and add some water. This is just normal water, clear, and it should just kind of flow up and make some interesting textures. Something kind of like that. If you want, you can add a little bit of darkness just to kind of give a bit of contrast, maybe put a touch of blue in there or something. And if your beach is dry, you can just add a touch of that, let it kind of flow its way up. That just kind of gives you some depth. And actually, you don't even need to touch this much because we're going to come back and deal with that in a second. But you can see by just sort of like letting the water do its thing, you just get these really fun textures and almost, it's almost smoke, like these patterns. Just got a bit more, so I'm just going to put a bit up there just for fun. Oh, yeah, I'm already seeing blooms happen. Okay, this is great. This is great. Leaving it alone. I think the reason that I have such a hard time leaving watercolor alone is it feels like it shouldn't be that easy. Like to make a beautiful painting or like to really see something come together, it feels like it should take a lot. But the truth is, it takes a lot of patience. Like this is one I just finished recently. Here's a little bear and some people, and honestly, so like my favorite parts of this probably took a quarter of a second. And just like leaving it alone is really what it takes if you can. It's almost like today's world, there's so many things to care about, there's so many things to worry about, but if you can just focus your mind and focus on what's in front of you, that is such a blessing and a skill, but is perhaps the hardest thing on earth to do. Next, we're going to work on this little touch of beach right behind our whale here. So I'm holding mine up just to get a sense of what color this is. Mine is like a cerulean mixed with a tiny bit of other blue. But I'm just kind of trying to aim for the same shade. Just seeing if my beach is dry. Yep, all good. And I'm gonna just add a dash of that here. It's not much, but it's enough to give some good contrast and to tie it to the rest of the paintings. It's feeling kind of Seward-like to me, which I really love. I love those kind of Pacific Northwest beachy waters where they're cold enough to kind of give you a zip, but they're also tempered enough to have all those giant trees and all that kind of cool salty air. It's like the best combination. Maybe I'll add just a touch of this blue, but I really probably don't even need that. Maybe a little bit right here. Piece by piece. If you do get a chance to paint in somewhere like Seward or the Oregon coast or the Olympic National Park, I would definitely suggest bringing a little wet watercolor pencil, something like this. This one is called an Inktense one, and there's some watercolor pencils that dry after you put them on. So you can have a totally soaked sheet of paper. You can make your outline, and then when it dries, it's fast. It's not going to bleed all over the place. And that's a really great way to paint in the rain. So maybe you see a scene like this and it's raining because it's always raining in Oregon. But that can be a really amazing way to still get an outline. And then when you're in a tent or a cafe or in a car or at home, you can kind of fill it in later, but you still made your mark, that's the trick. That's the trick. It's totally acceptable to paint at home from a photo, but you got to have that initial inspiration, and that can sometimes just come from something as simple as a shaky line. Okay, this is looking great. Seeing some fun patterns up there. These are guaranteed to look different. These are like snowflakes, no two are alike. And once this is just a touch more dry, we're going to add this top section, which you can see is much darker. We're going to add that in to give us some sense. You can kind of see, I can't really, but as these two connect, got those big forests here. That's the last of those big forests. And here we got kind of those mountains in the distance, sort of in the shadow a little bit, which will look really cool. Trees are hard because there's so many shades of green. Green is the one color that the human eye we can pick up more shades of green than anything else. That's why night vision is green, and it's probably because there's just so much green around us, that chlorophyll. And so if you can, diving into green can be really fun, but there's all these different pieces and shades. So this is going to be a really good test of how many greens can we kind of fit in. But up here, I'm thinking we're going to have a little bit of some kind of that like little tussock of grass, which is always the ones that I dream about hanging out there and camping. So I'm going to add a little bit of that right now. Give it a second to dry later. Touch of yellow, and then maybe a touch of green, kind of mixing it on my palette right there. Something like that. You can do a better one right here if you wanted. And our C stack itself is going to be mostly brown going into purple. But just getting that going right now. If you want to introduce another color, you can always just, scoop up and just put a drop of brown or something. Kind of depends on how subtle you want to get things. There we go. Just a dash. I feel like watercolor, you got cooking. Cooking has all of its fun little terms. A pinch, a dash, a spoonful. Watercolor, not quite. You got like a loaded brush or a brush, but there should be fun littler terms, huh? A scooch or a dot. Okay. Now, if things feel dry, and they do, yep, we're in good shape. I'm going to show you how I basically can cover up this. You saw how loose I was. I'm going to show you how that disappears almost instantly. You got that good negative space. That's what we're building. Just like this. This was, all one color, and then we kind of carved out the edge of that. I'm going to do the same right here. But we don't want to make up here too dark. So I'm actually going to add a touch of water right now, almost preemptively. Just a nice big blob of water, making sure to stick within my lines, within reason. Lines are meant to be crossed, and that holds true for coloring books and watercolor and everything really. And now I'm going to get a nice kind of dark green going. So I got some green. I'm going to add a little bit of blue to that. That's looking lovely. Perfect. That's fun. That's perfect. And I'm going to come in here, and first off, I'm just going to touch it to this outside. Give that some time to start doing its thing. See how it's already starting to flow? That's so fun. And now that I've kind of touched all of those edges, now comes the fun part of being able to kind of fill it in a bit darker. And I'm also just adding some splops, official watercolor term as of now, right there. Maybe a touch more green, and a touch of blue. And we're going to add that right down here, just like that. In a second, I'm going to go match it to the other one just to see how close I was. But you can still have this edge be whatever color you want, and then just really match the corner. That's all you got to do. And you'll see I'm making these just dark enough that I kind of cover up the green that I added earlier. That's all I need. Real concentrated. But if you go over the line, just pretend like it's on purpose, and just the watercolor will hide it for you. Don't worry. Touch more over here. And this side is a little bit lighter than that one, but that's okay. You'll see. We'll match one side, and that's fine for this one to kind of be a nice misty situation going on. Something like that. Beautiful. Maybe I'll even put a touch of purple up in the corner just to give something a little different. Something like that. I feel like purple, if you can use it in moderation, it's like the subtlest thing. If you can just get some subtle purples, that's where it's best. Almost like that shimmer on the edge. Yeah, something like that. And now, let's see how close I was. Very far off. So I'm going to just really mix a bunch of this green, very thick paint. Not changing the colors really, but just changing the kind of concentration. Now it's very kind of thick, very pigmented, and I'll add a little bit right there. That's the difference between like the really fancy paints and maybe something that's a bit more in the Crayola side of things. You're paying for pigments. If you buy a $17 tube of paint versus a $1 tube of paint, they probably have about the same amount of pigment in there. the $1 tube paint is gonna, have 1/17th of what that really expensive one is, but they're both totally valid and they're both good paint. Um, just a lot of artists like the real concentrated stuff, and I guess those chemicals and minerals and things just cost money, and that's kind of where a lot of that prowess comes from. But a lot of it is the same stuff, or at least the same idea. It just the expensive stuff doesn't have quite as many fillers and things. But to me, color is a color, and I love it. Just how different and the way everything reacts. Paper though, that's where it's at for me. That is where I see like the biggest difference. There we go. A little bit closer. See? I just had that end, now it kind of fades and looks on purpose. Gotta figure out some way to like, yeah, maybe I should have scooted my thing or become left-handed. That way I could still put this there where it needs to be and then paint. Although learning how to be ambidextrous for the sake of a tutorial, not quite where I'm at yet. Okay, so how are things looking for you all? Everything feel good? Is it kind of coming together? Probably still feels a little bit hazy, a little bit sketchy, and that's okay. Come back here and just see where things are at with the finger. Looks like it's still a bit wet, which is fine. I might come help it out and dry it out just a touch. Just encourage some dryness. Because some of the next steps are going to be filling in these C stacks, which will be really, really fun. So before I do that, I might just add in these little trees right here. Let me see this comparison. You'll see they're kind of nice dark blues and purples. And I'm going to make whatever's in my front kind of have the most contrast. So I'm just going to add a couple of those in right now. And here's what that looks like. Start with that basic green that we already put down there. Just something. You could also use water if you wanted, but this is like flavored water. Welcome to the cucumber infused hotel water of the watercolor world. Just a touch right there. And I'm just gonna work it back, because it's still technically kind of connected, but it doesn't need to be too fancy. We're just doing a little bit, just something like that. Perfect. And then maybe a little bit of purple, because why not? Something like that, maybe. And then I'll kind of finish it off with blue. You can often think about how, colors sort of change, and you can kind of layer them just like like a cake or something. You might want to go from red to, say, green, which if you do that, you're going to get kind of brown in the middle. But if you do red and then a yellow and then a green, you're going to kind of naturally get there on its own. It's like music, right? There might be a few notes in between, and it sounds nice if you put them up there. A little bit of this blue now. Just delicately putting that in there. Very grateful that we added in all of those nice light colors earlier because we got this nice contrast. But look at that. We got the blue to the purple to the green. So smooth. So elegant. Very nice. Lovely. And then maybe just a touch of this blue right down here as well. Just down by the beach where you got those good shadows. A couple over here as well. Maybe a few over there. All right, moment of truth. Let's see. Yeah, this could be related. All right, look at that come together. How cool is that? Whenever you're worried about a watercolor or something like that, or you start a big painting, just know, I mean, like, they do connect. You only got to focus on something this big at a time, right? Like I was saying, if you can just kind of focus on what's in front of you, you can do big, amazing things. And it really only happens one brushstroke at a time and one square at a time. So when the world feels too big and scary, or your paper feels too big and scary, just break it up. It's very manageable. We do this all the time by accident. It's only when we look up that things get terrifying. So that's looking lovely. And now it might be time to start on our little C stacks here, which will be so fun. Adding a touch of watercolor paper, toilet paper, right there, just to make sure that that doesn't bleed in too much. And here's what the C stack's gonna look like. I'll do this one, and then I'll wait till that one's a bit more dry and do that one. So it's going to start kind of up here with some kind of tan browns, and then actually just a touch of some shadow because I want that like little cliffy feel. And then it's going to come down to maybe a purple and indigo. just same idea right there. We're just doing it with a C stack. I love those browns because when something's too green, it's almost too green. Maybe it's just because I live in Alaska and I'm not used to green, but I like some contrast. If there is green, I want something kind of warm or dark or or toned to kind of flesh that out. So all right, here we have where am I going to put this? I'm thinking we're going to add just a touch right to the top here, just like this. And then it's going to kind of fold down to some lovely shadow because I feel like C stacks are just they're just made for shadow. Maybe a touch of yellow up as well. Oh yeah, that's real good. Okay, so we got kind of some brown, some yellow, and then maybe a touch more brown. And then we're going to move purple, and then we're going to do indigo. Perfect. If that was just on its own, that would be way too bright. That's kind of the McDonald's arch almost of nature. And now when I add some purple, just a little bit in here, then we start to get some of that, a little bit of that brown, but that's fine. We're in good shape. You can pick kind of a shadow side if you want. We're getting some cool kind of contrast. That's looking lovely. And now let's add some indigo kind of to that base. Maybe because it's in shadow, or maybe just because that is, kind of where it's getting watery and all over the place. A little bit of indigo down here. Don't be afraid to let that be a bit darker than it feels because it will dry just a touch lighter. I mean, don't make it wild, but just enough. And we'll come back in. We'll add a little bit of a lip to that top here in just a second. You can also, if you don't like the shape, now is a great time. You can kind of shift that up and change it a bit if you need. It's going to feel off balance because those trees are going to come in here and they're going to kind of really balance it up. But for now, that's looking great. Let's try the same on the second little C stack. If you don't love the colors of your first, here's your chance. Here's your rebuttal. A little bit of this brown just going on. I might skip the yellow this time. I think going a bit overboard on my yellow. I might even come back in there and add a bit of brown just try to brown it up, de-yellow it a tiny bit. So you got some brown right there, and then just a touch of that purple. Lovely. Something like that. And then let's come in with the indigo we've already got on the palette. How cool is this? That, I feel like that's kind of what I was aiming for. But no, this works. This works. Everything is good. Everything's good. You can kind of see all these wet colors. They're kind of doing their thing now, which I love. I might even grab a bit of blue or something, blue or indigo, and maybe I'll try this now. Let's see if it works. You might want to hold off just in case I mess this up. But by adding just like a touch to this side right there, right under, you got this cool kind of cliff feel. How cool is that? Okay, well, we'll see in a couple minutes what this looks like. I'm already seeing this kind of puddle, and this is always confusing to me because it looks so dark and deep, but then it'll kind of dry into something light sometimes, or I'll be left with this puddle of inky darkness, which is also totally acceptable. Okay, testing, seeing how this all looks. Looks close to dry. We're getting there. I just help it along so I can get that tree going, and then by that time we should be ready for our other trees. Okay. Here's some chickens in the background being upset about how cold it is, but I get it. Also, I'm not covered in down, so they have it a little bit better than I do. A little bit of some colors here. So we're going to go something darker than this. We want that contrast. This is how these forests work, right? You got to kind of have your contrast between your layers, otherwise you literally lose the trees for the forest. So something like this, I just need it darker than that, but also I don't want to just paint it pure black. So I'll probably start with a base of green, and then I'm going to come in with indigo or purple or something. So here we go. Nice dark base of green, just loosely following those lines. You're totally allowed to kind of go out of the lines here too if you want. And then I'm actually going to take some of that tissue that I've got, and I'm kind of blotting off the brush because I want it to be pretty sharp and grabbing some of this pigment, and I'm just going to add just kind of blotting it in and letting it follow the lines of that green. Almost something like this. Same down here. Just letting that green follow. And this will do two things. One, it means that you don't have to re-go over your lines because it's just following the green, but also that green is going to cut it just a little bit in a nice way. You can even add a couple more little spikes if you need, or a tiny tree, something like that, just to give it a bit more shape. This seems ridiculously dark, but there is a chance with those greens, it's like a river rock. They're bright and shiny and dark until they dry and then they're light. That's kind of watercolor in general. Like right up here, you can kind of see it's already smoothing out a bit. You can always dip a touch of a paper towel if you want to those puddles. And it lightens it up, but mostly just pull some of the water out so you don't have quite as much of a puddle. You don't need to dip much. You don't need to blot. This is literally a dip because it is just soaking up that water on its own. There we go. Can do one up here if you kind of want to see what's going on this side. Just like that. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. We're getting there. This is what's going to bring it in, though. You ready for that? Here we go. Just to give you a sense, here's what we're dealing with. Pretty cool, isn't it? Oh, it's kind of fun, and how these build is, you had our little person right here. That was kind of the main focus. And they were kind of one of the darker pieces. And then we got this. But look at that contrast. See, this is why it's worth going a little bit darker on these ones, because look at that lovely contrast, just how much this tree stands out. The pressure's on because it's like that tree is the center of attention, so you don't want to trip. But it's that contrast as you kind of pull that out, you get braver, you get darker. It adds some, adds some depth. Okay, here we go. So these, I'm just going to stick a little bit away from the edge because otherwise the trees will get pulled into the C-stack, but that's fine. It will look cool too if that happens. And I'm actually going to start on this side, maybe with a touch of green, probably doing the same kind of method. If you want to get really fancy, because these two are kind of like differently layered, you could do the green and then let this whole tree stack dry and then do this one darker so you get a really beautiful contrast. But if you're impatient like me, it probably won't work, and you're just going to have the two bleed together, which is what I'm going to do, and I think it'll still look fine. Watercolor is all about, like, how much do I care? How much am I willing to wait? Okay, so I got some nice greens, some nice blues. I'm going to add nice yellows. I'm going to add some blue. I had blue on the mind. I'm going to add some blue, and then I'm going to add my indigo. So here we go. Here's some blue, just kind of on this side. And you'll see it's just moving over, moving in. Got a little tree just popping up over the corner here. A little bit down. And then because we add our nice little tussock, that is all good and ready. Oh, I am loving the shades of this, actually. I don't know if I want to change too much. Isn't that fun? Kind of got that blue in the background. I'll still probably add a touch of that indigo on the top, just so it does stand out. But this is looking lovely. Just like that. Feel free to add extra branches as you need, or a little bird on the side of one, or whatever silhouette thing you need. Very cool, very cool. And so here's the point where if you wanted, you could wait and then make this side even darker and get some cool contrast, whatever it is, or you could just kind of move forward. Here's what that'll look like. A bit of green. And here's kind of a fun thing too, right? So if you just added green, this is just kind of what your tree would look like, which is totally fine and kind of what I used to do. But there's something like that the shadows, the layers, you wouldn't think to add a blue to a green tree, but it matters. It makes sense. And when you see these things in the wild, when you really start to look, you do see these blues and everything. And it kind of changes the way you see nature, which I love. That's my favorite part about watercolor. It's not, honestly, it's not the painting. It's just the way that it affects how I see the world. I get to paint for half an hour, and then I see trees differently for a week. A little bit of blue here. A little bit more blue right there. And maybe, we'll see. I think they're going to kind of bleed into each other, but that's fine. And then here comes our indigo. Oh, that's way too much. Actually, can you have too much indigo? Let's find out. Touch indigo just on this edge. It might bleed in, it might not, or it might look even cooler than I could have imagined. There we go, a little bit right there, and a little bit down here. Something like that. Now that is really, really fun. I love how that is all turning out. I'm a little worried about this tree right here. I thought that was going to kind of dry up and smooth out. Let's see how this looks. I might just add a touch more, just dip a corner in there and see if I can kind of pull a little bit of that out. But either way, I think it's gonna look pretty good. I just do a little bit of this. This is why paper towels and tissue paper can be so helpful. Kind of lets you. It's like in curling, you know, those brooms that they kind of push along the edge as the thing comes, and they sort of. It's like that's what these are. They're not going to change anything, but they kind of let you nudge it along, just in the right direction, whatever you're looking for. And there we go. Maybe I'll add just a little bit more blue in the bottom. Stick these two together, just so that they're kind of a little bit more on the same team. And boom. I think that's there. It just needs to dry. But here's how they all kind of look together. We've got this really fun connection. Fits right into the whale. Let's see if I can do the second. Everything all totally soaked. That's right. The back of these might just have a little bit of indigo on them now. Got our bit there and a little bit over here. That's looking really cool. And then, as I said, we're kind of working on a spiral. So next will be here, and then we'll kind of work our way around until it's a 5x5 and goes all the way over. So ultimately 25 paintings, one really big square of a landscape, but each of them individually is amazing to see how they're turning out. Also, if you have any questions too, feel free to reach out to the Instagram or anything else, or let me know right now. Chances are, if you have a question, other people do. It's amazing how, you know, these ideas, we all have one, but it takes one person to articulate it. So feel free to ask any of those now or later. But also, I can't wait to see all of these different ones and how, you know, this is how mine turned out. But immediately when I see other people's, it gets me new ideas, and maybe theirs looks more impressionistic. Or they really took the purple. It's really cool to share, if not for yourself, for how it could affect other people. It's cool to paint it forward. But also, I just get so excited whenever I see some of that. Okay, so letting that dry just a touch and check in. No major questions, but it seems like a lot of people are really excited about theirs. I can't wait to see these. I'll detape this and just kind of scoot it up if you want to see some of the details while it's still nice and wet. Feels like a soggy pancake. There we go. And I tape mine down so that mostly like I don't knock it around. I've got good framing, but it is a clever thing if you have like a little bit of this is just kind of whatever you call it, painter's tape or something, meaning that it's non-acidic and also it's not going to pull quite too much. Like duct tape would tear the paper, but I'll often put some painter's tape just kind of right below to kind of hold it in place, which is great for filming, but a nice little trick if maybe you have a table or something. These pieces of paper don't bend or warp too much, but it can be an easy way to do that. Okay, so here's some of that texture. You can kind of see just all of the ways those colors, like this in particular, right? Look at that purple just shining through. Love it. Just love how the blues mixed with the greens, mixed with the indigo. But also, isn't it funny how your eyes almost glaze over these parts, but they're still so vivid and so part of it. So it's cool. We work all in the background. If the background wasn't there, you would notice it. But for some reason, when it is, it's done right. It's almost invisible. Only thing I might change is maybe I might add a bit of shadow. Here's what I would do with that. If I was to add a touch of shadow, first I would get unfuzzy, put those glasses back on. And then if I was to add like a touch of shadow, probably just get a very, very, very opaque amount of indigo or blue. And maybe I just add a touch down here like this. Because these trees are going to cause some, so just something like that. Maybe even a touch right here on the edge on my beach. And by doing some kind of opaque indigo, it's really mixing with whatever colors below as well. So that's where you get some of that. Here's what that looks like right here. Pretty cool. It's the small things, but I think they kind of add up. Okay, there you go. Well, I'm not seeing tons of questions, but definitely reach out to us. We've got a really fun Discord, uh, big community, which is really cool, and I just love how people share it there. Also on Instagram, we're on Blue Sky. We have a really fun newsletter where we send a lot of this out. And so if you get a chance to be connected on any of that, it's wonderful to reach you there. But also, we just love how that community is growing. And in days like these, that community just means the world to us and other people as well. So if you want to be part of it, we'd love to hear your voice or just see your paintings, or just knowing that you're painting along is joy enough. So thanks for this fun little sketch. I can't wait to see what happens next, but also can't wait to see how they all turned out.